Do you have any predictions? Do you think that we ought to expect anyone to drop off? Do we think that anyone is likely to have a very different type of performance compared to what they've done previously? Do we expect more sensibility from these goddamn people who are trying to give
Wow.
healthcare and everything to the illegals and all kinds of nonsense like that? Where did the reasonable people go? Man.
Wow. Good question. These are great questions. I always thought I would love seeing politics being shaken up by more radical solutions, but now that I see it, uh, it's like be careful what you wish for. Because now that I see what it looks like, it's far more disturbing. It's so much less rational than I always hoped it would be when progressives kind of take over the Democratic Party. Uh, it turns out it's kind of ugly and scary.
Well, but
So,
also
like,
shaken up is, I think that shaken up would be an example of what Mike Gravel did in 2008. I think when he was running his campaign there with against Clinton and Obama, and he was shaking things up. Like he is definitely very much a left-leaning person, but he was an outsider, and he was introducing topics into a conversation that maybe otherwise wouldn't have been there. But now I don't even think it's shaking things up. It's just like the norms have shifted, and
mhm.
and and not in a particularly positive direction by the looks of it.
Yeah, exactly. If there was someone, I would say uh, Bernie shook things up in the last race in
Mm-hmm.
2016, but he did it in a good way. Like regardless of people will disagree with his ideas, but I thought he came in with positive energy,
Totally.
and he made a really strong challenge. He almost won. He had a shot at beating Hillary. It was a big shock. He came out of nowhere, but his camp wasn't. They weren't scary. They were appealing to the population, and they were doing a really good job of just appealing to what a lot of the country wanted. As far as I could tell, they had a bit of a narrative, like an anti rich person narrative, I suppose,
Hmm.
but they weren't dividing the country down class and gender lines, or gender and racial lines. I mean, and they didn't have this attitude of it's our way or no way, and
Hmm.
they didn't have an approach of intimidating people that they disagreed with. Yeah, it seems so much less healthy now. They're talking about some of the same progressive ideas, but it's in a much less healthy way. So, anyway, to bring it back to your original question, it seems, from what I've been hearing, like there's been some new polls and information out since the last debate showing that that would indicate that most of the population is not excited about these more radical elements.
Hmm.
And so I think there's enough info there that it should reassure people who are a little bit more moderate within the Democratic race to say, okay, actually we're beyond the pale of what the population is looking for. There's a niche here for someone who's a little bit more moderate to potentially win the election, and I should stick to that message rather than just trying to appeal to the Twitterati.
Hmm.
But I don't know if they will, because I'm amazed by how radical the Democrats have been becoming in their rhetoric,
Well,
despite what
speaking
they should know about the population.
Yeah. Speaking of moderates, though, like somebody like Tulsi Gabbard, for instance, would you describe her as reasonably moderate?
Yeah, I think that's the kind of person I'm talking about. And it's funny because, like, when I say moderate, I don't really mean in policy. I personally have no problem with like bold changes. So, but it's the rhetoric. What I'm looking for is like moderate in just in the way you deal with other people, and you don't demonize people who disagree with you. That's my trouble with the radicals. It's not radical policy. It's like radical attitude
Hmm.
that's become the real problem with the Democrats. So yeah, I would say she's like moderate in the sense that she's probably going to be much more appealing to most of the population.
Yeah. Yeah,
What do you think?
somehow the media doesn't seem to be particularly um, kind to her, and that's unfortunate. But as far as her policy and overall line of reasoning and manner of speaking, she does seem certainly more presidential and more authentic than most of the people in that in the running.